On November 4th, 1979, 9 months after the Islamic Revolution, a group of Iranian students stormed the United States Embassy in Tehran. 52 American diplomats were taken hostage. They would remain in captivity for 444 days. The crisis that followed did not just reshape the relationship between two countries. It ended a presidency, launched a secret war, and produced one of the most embarrassing military failures in American history. A failure so complete that it became a turning point in how the United States thought about special operations for the next generation. This is what actually happened. The hostage crisis began as a protest and became a siege. The students who seized the embassy were not acting on government orders. They were responding to a specific event. The United States had admitted the deposed Shah into the country for medical treatment. To the students, this was proof that Washington was planning to restore him to power. Another 1953, another coup. The Iranian government, rather than immediately ordering the students to leave, recognized the political opportunity and endorsed the takeover. For 444 days, the most powerful country on earth could not free its own diplomats from a group of students in a foreign capital. President Jimmy Carter tried negotiation, he tried diplomatic pressure, he tried economic sanctions. Nothing worked. In April of 1980, he authorized a military rescue operation. The plan was extraordinarily complex. A temporary forward air base would be established roughly 500 kilometers southeast of Tehran. 6 transport aircraft would land there carrying 130 special operations soldiers. 3 additional aircraft would carry fuel for refueling. 8 military helicopters, launched from a naval vessel in the Gulf of Oman, would land at the staging area, refuel, and fly the soldiers to a second position 80 kilometers outside Tehran. From there, the soldiers would transfer to vehicles, drive into the city, storm the embassy, free the hostages, and withdraw them to a nearby stadium. The helicopters would then arrive at the stadium, pick up the soldiers and hostages, fly to an abandoned airfield, and from there, 2 large transport aircraft would fly the entire group to safety. The plan required everything to go right across multiple countries, multiple aircraft types, multiple handoffs, in total darkness in an unfamiliar country, in secret. On April 24th, 1980, the operation began. A sandstorm hit the staging area. 1 helicopter broke down before reaching the landing zone. A second made an emergency landing in the desert. Of the 8 helicopters launched, only 6 reached the staging area, and one of those developed a hydraulic failure on the ground, leaving the mission with fewer aircraft than the minimum required to proceed. The operation was aborted. During the withdrawal, one of the remaining helicopters collided with a transport aircraft on the ground. 8 American soldiers died in the fireball. The rest of the force abandoned their equipment and fled. Iranian television broadcast footage of the burned aircraft and the bodies. Jimmy Carter had authorized a mission that killed 8 of his own soldiers, left their bodies in the Iranian desert, and freed no one. He did not win re-election. The hostages were finally released on January 20th, 1981, the exact day Ronald Reagan was inaugurated as president. The timing was not coincidental. Iran had negotiated their release to maximize Carter's humiliation and signal to Washington that a new era had begun. 4 months after the hostages came home, a new war started. Saddam Hussein, the Iraqi dictator, looked at Iran and saw an opportunity. The revolution had disrupted the Iranian military. The country was internationally isolated. The economy was under pressure. And Saddam had a territorial dispute with Iran over the Shatt al-Arab waterway, the river forming part of their shared border. In September of 1980, Iraqi forces crossed into Iran. What Saddam expected to be a quick campaign lasted 8 years. The Iran-Iraq War became one of the longest and deadliest conventional conflicts since the Second World War. Both sides suffered devastating losses. Neither achieved its objectives. The Iranian military, despite its post-revolutionary disorganization, managed to push Iraqi forces back from their initial advances within 2 years, and then held the line in a grinding war of attrition. During much of this war, Saddam Hussein received support from the United States. Washington supplied Iraq with battlefield intelligence. American officials facilitated the transfer of agricultural credits that freed up resources for military spending. Equipment and technology flowed through intermediaries. This was the same Saddam Hussein who, a decade later, America would go to war to remove. But in the 1980s, he was useful, a counterweight to the Iranian regime that Washington most wanted to weaken. Here is where the story becomes genuinely difficult to follow, because simultaneously, the Reagan administration was also secretly selling weapons to Iran. In 1986, a Lebanese newspaper published a story that should not have been possible. The United States government, which had designated Iran a state sponsor of terrorism in 1984, which had imposed sweeping economic sanctions, which was publicly backing Iraq in the war against Iran, had been secretly selling anti-tank and anti-aircraft missiles to Tehran. The arrangement worked like this. Iran, which was funding and directing the Lebanese militant group Hezbollah, had influence over Western hostages being held in Lebanon. The Reagan administration wanted those hostages freed. Iran wanted weapons for its war against Iraq. A deal was struck, routed through Israel and a network of private arms dealers to obscure American involvement. The profits from the arms sales, and this is where the scandal acquired its second dimension, were then secretly diverted to fund the Contra rebels in Nicaragua, who were fighting the left-wing Sandinista government. Congress had explicitly prohibited American funding for the Contras. The administration found a way around the prohibition using money that, on paper, had nothing to do with the United States government. When the story broke, the full architecture of the deception came into view. A country officially classified as an enemy, officially under American sanctions, officially accused of sponsoring terrorism, was receiving American weapons, paid for through accounts in Swiss banks, routed through shell companies in Bahrain, the proceeds funding a covert war on the other side of the planet. This was not a rogue operation. Senior officials in the Reagan administration had authorized and managed it. The Iran-Contra affair, as it became known, confirmed for Iran and for much of the world that American policy in the Middle East operated according to its own private logic, disconnected from the public positions Washington declared. Sanctions meant something different in practice than they did in announcement. Enemies could be useful, principles were flexible. In July of 1988, the United States Navy cruiser Vincennes shot down Iran Air Flight 655 over the Persian Gulf. 290 civilians died. The U.S. government stated that the crew had mistakenly identified the commercial airliner as a military aircraft. The Reagan administration expressed regret, but refused to apologize. The captain of the Vincennes later received a Combat Commendation Medal. In Iran, the incident was not processed as a tragic mistake. 2 months later, the Iran-Iraq War ended with a ceasefire. Neither side had won. Hundreds of thousands were dead on both sides. The borders were almost exactly where they had been in 1980. Iran emerged from 8 years of war, battered, isolated, and deeply suspicious of every power that had been involved in the region during those years. It had been invaded by a neighbor armed and supported by the West. It had watched American warships patrol the Persian Gulf. It had seen its civilian aircraft shot from the sky, and it had survived all of it. That survival, under sanctions, under military pressure, under diplomatic isolation, became a central part of how the Islamic Republic understood itself. The outside world had tried to destroy this state and failed. That fact justified everything about how the state was organized and everything it had done to defend itself. By the time the 1990s began, the basic architecture of the conflict was in place and would remain largely unchanged for the next 3 decades. Iran was designated a state sponsor of terrorism. Comprehensive economic sanctions were in effect. Diplomatic relations did not exist, and underneath all the formal hostility, a more fundamental confrontation was developing, one that had less to do with hostages or arms deals and everything to do with physics. Iran's nuclear program had roots going back to 1957, when the Shah and the United States signed a civilian nuclear cooperation agreement. The program survived the revolution, went underground during the chaos of the early 1980s, and then re-emerged in the 1990s in a form that concerned Western intelligence services deeply. Was Iran building a bomb? The question would define the next chapter of the conflict.